It's time to kick off season 2 of Flip That Truck. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to season 2 of Flip That Truck. If you're not familiar with this series, what we do is we start out with trying to find an inexpensive deal to be had where we can take that, fix it up, finish it, do whatever it takes to be able to sell it for a profit or trade it for something that we can turn into a better vehicle, so on and so forth, until at the end we end up with a vehicle that I'd like to keep. For the beginning of this season, I picked up this rig here. Now, I picked this up fairly inexpensively, and it's got an interesting setup overall. Now, what we do have is a Vanquish Origin half cab body on a Vanquish VS4-10 chassis kit as far as the underlayings there. But from there, we've got a set of axial Capra axles underneath. That's kind of a cool little fit, and it actually works pretty well with this truck overall. Now, it did take a custom link set to put those axles underneath this chassis, so it's got some assorted stainless links on it to get it sitting like you see it here. It does have a 4-link front suspension rather than the traditional 3-link with panhard that you would see, because it also has an axle mounted servo rather than a chassis mounted servo. But it tucks up pretty nicely into the chassis, and you can hardly even see that it's axle mounted. Efficient, so a little bit better for performance, but you just lose a little bit of that scale appearance. There has been some chassis brace trimming done to make sure that that axle mounted servo clears during suspension travel. The shocks on this are some aluminum bodied axial SCX-10 shocks. So a little bit of an upgrade there, but just a standard axial shock. The wheels and tires that came on here are some takeoffs from an axial UMG-10, so a military style wheel and a plastic beadlock. I picked this truck up as an incomplete roller. It was pretty much like you see it here, but it still needed some electronics to be added. And the transmission that was in it wasn't 100% fixed. It had the axial gray plastic transmission case with some upgrades inside, but not everything was spinning properly. And that was because of the difference of using some of the aftermarket parts with that axial plastic gray case. The design of that case is different than some of the other axial cases. So when you just try and put regular 3-gear upgrade parts into it, sometimes it starts to bind. So I ended up having to go in there and make a couple simple just modifications and clearances to get everything spinning properly. So I picked this truck up for $325, and I think that's a pretty good price for what we have. The Capra axles, the width actually looks pretty good on this truck. It's not too wide, but it gives it a bit of an aggressive stance, and the portals are a nice touch. A lot of people will like that, so I think that it was just overall a nice fit. And then I needed to add a servo and a motor. We've got a 1080 Hobbywing ESC in here and the program card. So that was able to just be programmed up, and it's hooked up to a Holmes 27-turn Trailmaster Sport motor. That 27-turn will be a pretty decent fit for this. I put a 15-tooth pinion on that motor. Could probably go a little bit higher if you really wanted to get some more speed out of it, but I've driven it around at this point, and it's pretty decent. We also have an EcoPower 120T servo in here, just a basic servo that will give us enough power to get this thing rolling. It'll handle well enough in the rocks. Not a super high-end servo, but just a budget servo. But beyond that, as this truck sits, it's in pretty decent shape. Other than just me needing to finish up some things, there wasn't a whole lot of work that I needed to do to cover. So at this point, there's only a couple of little things that I want to get done. One is that the rear drive shaft's a little bit on the short side, and it can fall out even if you're not careful. So I think I need to come up with a fix for that to make sure that that slider doesn't fall out. Pretty simple overall in that respect though. And then since there wasn't a lot else to do, I decided to do a little bit of metal fabrication work. And what I think I'm gonna try and do is every truck on this season of Flip That Truck, I want to do some sort of metal fabrication. For this truck, I thought the best project for that would be adding a bed mounted roll bar. So I went out to the shop, and the first thing I did was I cut some thin steel plates to put on the outside bed rail area. These are just 22 gauge steel. I took another half cab body that I had to actually make the templates, just using some blue painter's tape. So I had 2 pieces to mount to the actual bed rails. From there, since I wanted to make sure that I kept the alignment proper, I took and made another template of the body and drilled it right into a single piece of steel. That way I could bolt those new pieces I made right to it. That way I knew that I could weld right on that piece of steel without having to damage a body. The material I used for the roll bar itself is 3/16 DOM tubing. It's actual tubing. 3/16 is the OD and 0.035 is the wall thickness. It's nice and light, and it's pretty strong when braced up properly. For this, it's mainly a cosmetic thing, and I just didn't want to add too much weight by going with solid rod. When using actual tubing, you do need to be careful with the benders that you use because you can kink it. So what I'm using is an Oakenshield Productions bender. It's a nice bender that gives me a nice decent radius, and I never have to worry about kinking the tube. For the design of this, I just kind of winged it. I eyeballed my first bend, matched it up as best I could on the second, worked out well enough. With those plates mounted to that single piece of plate steel, I was able to just get that there, set the roll bar, and kind of try and match the back angle of the cab the best I could. And I have to say that I'm pretty surprised at how close I got the angle. For the construction of this, I'm using the Detroit Torch DHC 2000. Now this is just a very nice fine tip flame torch. I have a jeweler's torch and those work well also, but this one is just one step above yet, and it just works so well and it's so easy to use. You need to make sure first you have both sides of your material very clean, sanded, smooth, and then I'm using some flux around the joint itself. Then I heat the joints with that torch and flow in some silver solder. The silver solder I got from Holmes Hobbies. I believe this is a 56% silver solder. Holmes sells this in a small quantity, so you don't have to buy a ton. It's a good source for it. After doing the initial roll bar hoop, I did some simple down bars to the back side of those plates. And then before painting, I just went through and sanded everything with a file, sanding blocks, just to get all of that excess flux off of the part, the best I could at least. Normally I'd like to sandblast this, but this was just a quick project that I wanted to do. Only took me about 2 hours from start to finish to get this little roll bar done. Overall though, I think it makes a big enough impact to the overall look of this vehicle that I'm really happy that I did it, and it's something that I'll probably decide to add to most of my trucks that use this same half cab body. Now let's run through that simple grading system that I've been putting on all of the trucks for the Flip That Truck series. Basically, I've come up with 5 of my own categories to try and judge somewhere around where I think these trucks fall. That way I give myself some sort of comparison to both past and future vehicles and trying to see a progression as we go. The first category in the grading system is quality, and that's quality of the parts, quality of the build. Now I didn't do a grading of when I initially got it, when I didn't have some of the electronics and things like that. I've already finished it, so we're just gonna wrap all of this into one score as it sits now, as it will be sold. So quality wise, the VS4-10 chassis, the body, the bumpers, those are all very nice parts. They all fit really well together as they were designed that way. All of that is great. It's also got stainless links all the way around, and the Capra axles are nearly new, but they are just a stock plastic axle with no upgrades. However, again, still a pretty decent axle. The transmission inside is a plastic axial gray 3-gear case with the motor plate and everything molded in. Not the best case, but they do the job just fine. But inside's completely upgraded, so we're in great shape there. So the quality of all of those parts that are basically used, other than the kit takeoff wheels and tires, we're actually starting with a pretty decent quality base overall. The electronics that are inside, the Hobbywing 1080 ESC is a very capable brushed ESC. Nothing wrong with that at all. We have a new Holmes Hobbies Trailmaster Sport motor in there, which is an inexpensive but quality sealed can brush motor. And then we have a EcoPower 120T servo. Not a stellar servo, but one that will definitely get the job done. So overall, I'm gonna give this a 7 on the quality category. The next category I have is age and generation. Now, the VS4-10 chassis is fairly new, and the Capra axles that are on it are very new. It does have an older style 3-gear transmission, so nothing special in that area. But I think still giving this a 7 in that age generation category is more than fair. The next category is finish, and this is pretty basic put together. Now, like we said, it does have an axle mounted servo, and that did take some chassis brace cutting and modifying up front to make sure that everything clears. So there's that's needed. The links are kind of just a mix and match of stainless links to get this to fit into the proper wheelbase. And then I put together just a very simple roll bar that's not, the highest quality thing ever, but I think it adds a little bit. So finish wise, I think we'll go kind of conservative at about a 6, just because there's not a whole lot to this truck yet. The fourth category is dependability. Now, that 3-gear transmission that's in this truck is basically bulletproof at this point. It's built up well. It does have the molded plastic case, but it's not going to be much of a problem for most people. The axial Capra portals that are on here though are completely stock, no upgrades at all. So any of the problems that you could have with a stock axial Capra portal, possible to have here. And then the drive shafts are just an axial wild bore. Now wild bores are a pretty decent shaft overall, but the rear drive shaft in this is just a little bit short and I think needs to have a little bit of length added to it. Maybe something that we still need to accomplish. And with the EcoPower 120 servo, again, it's just a pretty entry-level servo. So we're gonna keep the dependability at like a 6. And then the last category we have is resale. Now, there is a number of things about this truck that I think give it a really good resale possibility. One is that it has a VS4-10 Origin half cab body that fits properly with inner fenders. It looks like a VS4-10 Pro or Ultra, which obviously makes it seem like a more expensive truck than it is. It also has, a newer generation axial Capra portal on it. That's a bonus. Also has a little bit of custom tube work on it, other than having just a very simple brush system and a pretty budget entry-level servo. On the outward appearance, it looks pretty impressive, especially for what it took to get this thing put together. So I think resale-wise, going with a 7, pretty decent. But beyond just installing the electronics and getting a basic tune on that 1080 ESC, there just wasn't a whole lot that had to be done to this truck. So this one's gonna be able to move along basically right away. I'm gonna get everything finished up for this and then I'll list this for sale on my website. So you can go to harleydesigns.com. There's a for sale section where this will be, or there's also a Flip That Truck section where you can see all of the previous episodes of Flip That Truck, as well as the new trucks for season 2. And also currently I'm doing a giveaway before the 100th episode of the Scale News Update, where I'm gonna be giving away a Holmes Polar Pro V2 and a Castle Mamba X ESC. So if you're interested in that giveaway, I'll link it in the description below as well. That would be a great power plant to put into this inevitably also. So again, at this point, our plan is to sell this truck or find a good trade for it and continue to work our way up. In the last season, we ended up going through 4 trucks. This season, I could see going longer. 4 trucks, I think, was about as fast as I can imagine getting to the end. But that gives you a little peek into the first vehicle in this season of Flip That Truck. Really looking forward to this one. And again, I think that it's going to be fun to try and find something to do as far as custom fabrication to each one of these vehicles this season. Again, if you're interested in any of the vehicles in this series, make sure and go hit the website to see which one is currently available or for sale. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have an awesome rest of the week. Hit the like button if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.